I'd opened the app just to see what kind of nonsense it would spit out next. One time, I swear it added a random stranger to my contacts list and then started sending them selfies. Another time, it sent a picture of my bedroom to my ex-girlfriend, even though I unadded her months ago. It was always just a little creepy, but yet I couldn't bring myself to delete it. That night, I was laying in bed, phone in my hand, browsing through the random stories that my friends had shared. I was starting to feel tired, so I shut my eyes for a moment, but before I knew it, I was sucked into the app again. I opened my camera, thinking maybe I should just take a picture of myself and send it to one of my actual friends, just to feel a little less alone. But as I held my phone to my face, something felt off. The screen flickered, and for a split second, I swore I saw a figure in the mirror behind me. I shivered, quickly snapping to the photo and sending it to myself. As I waited for the app to load, I tried to shake it off the eerie feeling that had settled me over. But then, as the photo finally appeared on my screen, I gasped. In the picture, I wasn't alone. Standing behind me, in the exact spot where I had seen the figure in the mirror, was a girl. Or, at least that's what she looked like at first. As I stared at the photo, her features began to shift and warp, her once beautiful face twisting into something nightmarish. Her mouth stretched into a wide, hungry grin, and her eyes glowed with an unnatural shade of green. I feel like a cold sweat break out of my back as I realized that this was no ordinary glitch. This was something else entirely, something unknowable. Panic rising in my throat, I tried to tap on the photo to close it, but my fingers seemed to freeze in place. The more I struggled, the more the image on the screen began to change, as if it were alive. The girl in the photo leaned forward, her face inches from my own, and whispered something in a language I'd never heard before. A chill ran down my spine, and I felt the weight settled heavily on my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I was trapped, helpless, as the girl in the photo continued to taunt me, her voice echoing through my head like a nightmare symphony. Time seemed to slow down, and I could feel myself fading away, slipping into nothingness. As the last threads of consciousness unraveled, I caught a glimpse of something else in the corner of my eye. Another figure, standing just beyond the edge of my own field of vision. It was indistinct, shapeless, but somehow familiar. Like it had been there all along, just waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The figure began to solidify, becoming more distinct with each passing second. It was a man, tall and thin, with skin as pale as the moonlight streaming through my window. His eyes were sunken deep into his skull, and his mouth was twisted into a bitter smile. He looked like the Wraith, a creature from my nightmares come to life. As he stepped closer, I felt a wave of cold wash over me, as if the air had been sucked from the room. He reached out a skeletal hand and touched my cheek, and for a moment, I felt weightless, as if I was floating. His touch sent a shiver down my spine, and I felt myself growing weaker. "You're mine now," he whispered, his voice like a rustling of ancient leaves. "You belong to us, and you shall never be free." As these words washed over me, I felt a strange calm descend upon me. I welcomed the darkness, embraced like an old friend. The girl in the photo retreated, fading back into the shadows from which she had emerged. The room spun, and I felt myself drifting further and further away. My last thought was of the man, standing there before me, with his icy fingers still pressed against my skin. He looked like the figure from my nightmares, but somehow, in this moment, he felt like home. He was the only constant in this strange, shifting world. As I slipped into oblivion, I knew I would never be free from his grasp. My vision faded to black, and I felt my body go limp. For a moment, there was nothing. No pain, no fear, no sense of self. I was just a speck of dust floating aimlessly through the endless void. And then, like a flower blooming in the darkness, I felt a warmth spread through me. It was a familiar sensation, one that I had known for as long as I could remember. It was awakening. My eyes flooded open, and for a moment, I wasn't sure where I was. The room was dimly lit, and I could feel the softness of the bed beneath me. As I took in my surroundings, I remember the horror I had faced on the computer screen, the figure in the mirror, and the wraith-like man who had claimed me as his own. Shuddering, I sat up, my heart racing. The girl in the photo was gone, replaced by a simple desktop background of starscapes. I glanced around, half expecting to see the man's icy fingers reach for me from the shadows. But the room was empty. The only evidence of what happened was the lingering chill in the air and the weight that seemed to press down on my chest.